If the ancients could speak to us, what would they say? Would they share secrets of their lost world, tales of their triumphs, or maybe even recipes for their favorite bread? Or would they be trying to warn us? This question has haunted me on countless expeditions, standing in the shadow of colossal statues and running my hands over inscriptions carved thousands of years ago. These aren't just decorations, they are messages frozen in time, etched into stone with a purpose. The ancient Egyptians were meticulous record keepers, obsessed with legacy and the afterlife. They believed their words had power, capable of transcending death itself. So, when we see symbols depicting chaos, every great mystery needs a breakthrough, that one aha moment that changes the game. For Egyptian hieroglyphs, that moment came in 1799. Napoleon's soldiers were rebuilding a fort in the Egyptian town of Rosetta, when they stumbled upon a broken slab of dark stone. It wasn't gold, it wasn't a statue, but it would prove to be more valuable than any treasure. This was the Rosetta Stone. What made it so special? It contained the same decree written in ancient Greek Demotic, and the mysterious hieroglyphs. It was the ultimate cheat sheet, a parallel text that could bridge the known and the unknown. The stone itself is administrative history, a decree issued in 196 BC for King Ptolemy V. Jean-François Champollion. Champollion's breakthrough was a moment of pure genius. In 1822, he was studying a cartouche from the temple of Abu Simbel that contained a name that wasn't on the Rosetta Stone. The name started with a circle, which he guessed was the sun, Ra in Coptic. The end of the name had two signs he had identified from Ptolemy's name as an S sound. In the middle was a symbol he didn't know. He theorized it might be the sound mess. Putting it together, he got Ramesses. Ramesses, one of the most famous pharaohs. He quickly found another cartouche with an ibis bird, a symbol for the god Thoth, and the same Mes and S signs. Thothmes, Thutmose, another great pharaoh. It all clicked. Overcome with excitement, Champollion famously sprinted to his brother's office, burst in and declared, "Je tiens mon affaire, I've got it!" before promptly collapsing and fainting from sheer exhaustion and exhilaration. He had done it. He understood that the hieroglyphic script wasn't just symbolic or just phonetic, it was a sophisticated combination of both. Some signs were letters. One of the most chilling texts to emerge from the newly translated Library of Egypt is the Prophecies of Neferti. This isn't a historical document in the traditional sense. It's a piece of literature, written during the Middle Kingdom around 1990 BC but set in the past, during the reign of King Sneferu. The story goes that the king is bored and calls for a wise sage, Neferti, to entertain him. But instead of telling a happy story, Neferti delivers a terrifying vision of the future. He speaks of a nation plunged into chaos where the social order is completely overturned. It's a prophecy of total collapse, a dark mirror of the prosperous kingdom Sneferu ruled. Neferti's words paint a grim picture. He says, "The land is utterly perished, and no remainder is. I show you the land in turmoil. The weak-armed is now the strong-armed. One salutes him who saluted. I show you the son as a foe, the brother as an enemy, and a man killing his own father." He describes foreigners invading from the east, the sun being covered and not shining, and the Nile River running dry. For a civilization utterly dependent on the Nile's annual flood, this was the ultimate apocalypse scenario. The prophecy is a litany of horrors, a complete inversion of the stable, ordered world the Egyptians called Ma'at. Not all warnings come in the form of grand societal prophecies. Some are more personal, wrapped in the guise of an adventure story. Take the tale of the shipwrecked sailor, another classic from the Middle Kingdom. On the surface, it's a fantastic yarn about an official who returns from a failed expedition and is afraid to face the pharaoh. To comfort him, a companion tells him a story of his own survival. In this story within a story, the companion recounts being the sole survivor of a shipwreck, washed ashore on a mysterious island. It's a classic setup for a survival tale, but this island is anything but ordinary. The sailor explores the island, figs, vines, and all manner of food, but then he encounters its ruler, a giant 30-cubit-long serpent adorned with gold, his eyebrows of real lapis lazuli. At first the sailor is terrified, but the serpent is surprisingly gentle. He tells the sailor not to fear, that a ship will come in 4 months to rescue him, but he also gives him a strange and ominous warning. He says that once the sailor leaves, the island will not be seen again, for it will have become water. Is it a myth about a phantom island, a kind of ancient Egyptian Atlantis, or is it an allegory? One of the most direct and honestly startling warnings found in Egypt is the famine stele. discovered on Sahel Island near Aswan, carved much later during the Ptolemaic period. Around the 2nd century BC, it claims to be a copy of a document from over 2,000 years earlier from the reign of the 3rd dynasty pharaoh Djoser. According to the stele, Djoser faced a catastrophic national disaster, a 7-year famine caused by the failure of the Nile to flood. This story has striking parallels to the biblical story of Joseph in Egypt. The text is written as a decree from Djoser himself. I was in distress on the great throne, and those who were in the palace were in heart's affliction. For the Nile had not come in my time for a space of 7 years. Grain was scant, kernels were dried up, every kind of food was lacking. The imagery is stark and desperate. For a society built on the river's rhythm, a 7-year failure was unthinkable. It was a sign the gods had abandoned them, that Ma'at, the cosmic order, had been broken. To solve the crisis, Djoser sends a message to the governor of the south, asking about the source of the Nile. He is told the god Khnum keeps the river's floodgates. In a dream, Khnum appears to Djoser and promises to restore the Nile's flow. So, when we read these ancient texts, how do we separate a historical report from a mythical warning? The line is incredibly blurry, and honestly, in many ways, the ancient Egyptians didn't make a strong distinction between the two. For them, the world was a place where gods directly intervened in human affairs. A famine wasn't just a lack of rainfall, it was a sign of a deity's displeasure. A military victory wasn't just good strategy, it was the divine power of the pharaoh manifesting on the battlefield. Their history was myth, and their myths were imbued with historical truth. This is a fundamental difference in worldview that we really have to appreciate. Historical reports, battle records, administrative lists tend to be more straightforward even if they are, heavily biased. King Ramesses II's account of the Battle of Kadesh is plastered all over temples in Egypt. It portrays him as a superhero who single-handedly defeated the Hittite army. While the battle did happen, modern historians know Ramesses' version is wildly exaggerated. So even a historical text is shaped to tell a specific story, often a story about the king's divine right to rule. Mythical warnings, on the other hand, often operate on a more symbolic level. The tale of the shipwrecked sailor isn't about a real island that sank, it's about the nature of fate, loss, divine encounters. The prophecies of Nefertiti use the memory of a real historical dark age, the first intermediate period, to create a cautionary tale about social chaos. This brings us to the big question, the one that honestly keeps me up at night. If these warnings were meant for future generations, what do they mean for us? It's easy to dismiss them as ancient superstitions. Stories from a world of sun gods. We have science, technology, a global information network. We don't blame a low Nile flood on the anger of a ram-headed god, but maybe we're missing the point. Perhaps the specific details of the myths are less important than the underlying patterns they describe. The names of the gods may change, but the nature of disaster does not. Think about the prophecies of Nefertiti. I show you the land in turmoil, the son as a foe, the brother as an enemy. Is this not a perfect description of civil war and political polarization in a world of social media echo chambers and deep ideological divides? The idea of a society turning on itself doesn't feel so ancient. We see a breakdown of trust in institutions, a rise in conflict, and a sense that the established order is more fragile than we thought. The text warns of Asiatics overrunning the land, a fear of outsiders that echoes in modern debates about immigration and national identity. The parallels are honestly unsettling. The famine stele warns of a 7-year environmental catastrophe. Today, we are facing our own environmental crisis on a global scale. The ancient Egyptians looked to the god Khnum to restore the flow. We look to science and policy. Standing in the silent halls of a 4,000-year-old tomb, you feel an incredible sense of connection to the past. The air is still, and the images on the wall seem to watch you. You're surrounded by messages, carefully crafted and preserved, designed to outlast empires. They believed that to speak the names of the dead was to make them live again. By deciphering their words, we have resurrected their voices, their fears, and their warnings. We have fulfilled one part of their ambition. Their words have indeed achieved a kind of immortality. But what was the ultimate purpose? Were these texts only meant to be political propaganda? Were they campfire stories to entertain a bored king? Or did the people who carved them have a grander vision? Did they suspect their own civilization would one day fall? Did they think their language would be forgotten? That a completely different kind of people, in a world they couldn't imagine, would one day find these messages? It's a tantalizing thought. A priest, a scribe, a pharaoh, looked into the distant future and tried to send a signal. They carved their messages into stone and hid them in the sand, a final, desperate act of communication across an ocean of time. Their words have survived for thousands of years. The question is, for whom?